So I've seen so many kind of steps to this future that I want to pose the question, why is the process so slow? What stopped us of getting all these things already? A starting question to you, what prevented us seeing the solar uplift towers everywhere in the world? What do we have to change?
I can only say that myself, my partner Rudolf Bergermann and others, we really did everything one can do to convince people in politics to understand the idea and to do something. I was from President Köhler, Töpfer, Fischer, I met all of them. I talked to them for hours. They were enthusiastic. Oh, this is unique. This must be done. I will do it tomorrow. I will call my friend so-and-so, and he has $1 billion. And they did nothing. And they asked, why didn't you do it? Why did you? Well, where has it been done before? And then I said, if you ask this question, if everybody asks this question, it will never happen. Somebody has to take the lead. Somebody has to have the courage. And we have no problem if you ask some other people to check what we propose. But this is the problem. If I don't do anything, I cannot make a mistake. That's the problem of our time.
Anybody others to comment on this? How we kind of start the process of really amplifying our impact? Matthias?
Well, I mean, I was saying in my talk that I think that, you know, the advantage of the small-scale strategy, obviously, is that it's immediate. I mean, you can, the photovoltaic cells on a roof have advantages and disadvantages, but I mean, you just need to go outside the countryside of Stuttgart and you see that people just take their fate into their own hands. Farms that are making biofuel generators and so on and so forth. And I mean, I think obviously that's inefficient, and from an engineer's point of view, it doesn't really resolve the problem in a totally satisfying way, but it's a small steps towards a common game, and I think we just need to have a certain there's got to be a certain mass, if you like, to move the larger decisions. I mean, you could see it very well in German politics. I think eventually they will probably come around to building such large power plants. I mean, the Desert Tech, other people are kind of, other people taking the claim, or claiming the credit for it now. But I mean, at least the thought is in the public agenda now. And eventually, hopefully, something will come of it. So I think we have to be a little bit patient, I guess, but not stop thinking in the same direction and keeping on the pressure, basically.
Is that, Herbert, what you meant with changing the mindset?
Yeah, I think really this connection, for example, with energy and water is a very strong one. And the lack of imagination and also of knowledge, you know, that we know so little about. For example, how we consume our food and how we think about food production. And if we think about, you know, energy, we have to think about food and about how we behave in our cities and what is the culture we are in. And that's what I think. I'm really more and more struggling. You know, a single project is not enough. I have to think about 70% of the water consumption in the world is basically food production. And to do this food production, I need a lot of energy. And it's, you know, and because we are asking for a certain kind of food, which needs a lot of water and a lot of energy consumption. And actually, it's not, we cannot blame politicians, in my mind. It's a question of culture. How can we influence and how can we outreach much more? I don't have the answer, but I think the shift has really to be not only from top down, but also from bottom up.
In my own experience, I have one example where we see, and you just talked about the same thing, where we see how the whole story works. About 14 years ago, I came to Schüco, to Bielefeld, and we discussed whether we should work on solar energy. And as engineers, we said, what is the efficiency of thermal collectors, what is the efficiency of photovoltaics, what possibilities do we have in future, thin film technology, and so on and so on. And so first of all, we started out a plant for thermal collectors. Then the plant worked, and we said, let's build a second line, because it really works. And at that time, the story began with photovoltaics, and people got a lot of money when they put electricity inside the net. And what happened at that time, we had in 1998, we had something like 1 million euros turnover on photovoltaics for some buildings. And last year or the year before last year, we had not 10 million or 100 million, but 1 billion turnover. Then they turned the screw, and the turnover broke down dramatically. And this is how the story works. As long as people can get money for something, they will buy, they will do. And to understand why, the only thing they are reacting on, that's the bad story, they are reacting on money. Economic things and ecologic things and social things are far behind. Many people are talking about ecologic and social things, but they work on economic ways. And this, from my point of view, is the main problem.
Well, I think that's slightly maybe fatalistic. I mean, I mean, at least you could say that in Germany there's a green movement, considerable green movement, which is driven by a certain degree of idealism or a certain ideology, if you like, set of ideas, which has had an impact in politics as well. So I mean, I do think there is a certain mindset embedded in people, which makes them, which contributes at least to how they behave and what decisions they take. It's not just all about. You sound like Karl Marx, actually. It's not just materialism.
If you would see the turnover week by week over the year, and in the moment when the people here now the money you get back will decrease by 20%, then immediately the curve gets up because everybody wants to buy in the last moment.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
we can see it week by week in our books.
Yeah. I mean, this incentive worked very well both in Germany and in Spain.
But I agree that also the culture changed in the meantime.
It did, yes. I think so.
And by the way, I'm not in the direction of Karl Marx.
Okay.
Why not? By the way, say one thing. I think the best practice projects could be projects for education, where education is for all and all people get some education more or less. And I think when we have a plan for have all these education buildings taken in a way which is very advantaged in technologies, but not only in technologies, also in social dispositions, then we can get something back. And I think I would like this idea of inclusion is for me not only a social thing, it's a programmatic thing for how we take the things. And inclusion says your last image with these guys, with this barbecue, this is a form of inclusion. It's the participation of the process and to have adoption, to have the possibilities to adopt a building. And now we have very separated things in our production from buildings. The separation goes on and on. The economic problems are more and more in the foreground of construct buildings. And this leads us to a separation from the different disciplines. And I think the only thing what we can make better is include all the things.
Thomas, you want to add something
time
in
for an
overtime?
additional question? Jörg Schlaich, you had this kind of provocative comment saying, like, there are millions, probably billions of people living in poverty and hunger, and we are talking about whatever. I thought this was very interesting, and then, like, when you talked about your solar upwind towers, you had a much broader look on the overall economics in these countries. And like we tend to forget about the economics. Like we are engineers and architects, we love design, we love engineering, but we don't be too close to economics, especially in these days, economical people are considered bringing us in these problems. However, should we have a much bigger understanding of the broader economics to be really successful? Not talking about the economics of a building only, but let's say the international broader economics to be successful in terms of massive change. Like the way you did with your solar upwind towers.
Well, I'm not sure whether I understood the question, but what I say is we have a huge energy demand. And we have huge deserts with plenty of sun, and we have billions of poor people who have no job. And this makes it obvious that we could use this source. And with the result that these poor people get less poor, get less children by this way, and that they can produce energy for their own purpose, because for their own development they need energy, but then also for export here. And they become wealthy, and so they can buy our products, they can buy our automobiles, for instance. Yeah, so the circle would close.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
If we are able to include these poor people in the world energy groups.
But you have thought your technology beyond the solar tower, what it can do in this country, whether we tend to focus a little bit on design and engineering. And that's the question. Should we go beyond and have similar thoughts in order to be successful? And cannot just ignore the politics and the social relationships in certain environments? That's a question to the...
Can I comment? I mean, I think it's the answer is obviously yes, but I mean, it's also a kind of dangerous path to tread on, because if you think of, for example, the way building activities were driven in East Germany or in other similarly thinking socialist countries, where there was an idea and the idea was somehow, you know, agreed upon in some kind of semi-democratic way. And then everything had to sort of follow that idea. It didn't, when it comes down to the individual result, it's difficult to find the idea, and B, the actual physical reality of it is totally disappointing. So I mean, I think we often fall into the same trap when we discuss ecology. We discuss it on the global level. It's all about kind of huge blah blah numbers and statistics blah blah blah, and then we fall back onto the question whether we have a kind of little reflector at the top half of our window so that the daylight kind of comes into the office space and so on and so forth. And I think we somehow have to find a way to be able to operate between those two scales in a way. There's no choice but to act locally, because it's just beyond our reach. I mean, I think what Herr Schlaich has been saying demonstrates that point. I mean, even if you have access to our politicians, the politicians themselves are limited in their radius of action. So it's very, very difficult to get huge things happening quickly. So small things can be put on the way relatively quickly, and many small things also make a kind of big, somehow big result in the end. So I think we're just condemned to carry on discussing our little details, but having the kind of mindset of the whole socioeconomic and cultural background that is connected to it.
Okay, thank you very much. You want to add one more in overtime?
I have just one point to this. I think we are always in the problem that we are lying in many ways. You know, one thing is that politics and decision makers, they always think about 4 years, and the impact of money, we always take only some aspect in account and not everything. So our consciousness is too small. If we would really have the whole picture, and it would come more to a truth, we would the urgency of change would be much more dramatic. We're just totally sort of narrow-minding in time and in consciousness. And on the other side, it is to say that it's too complex that people can understand. We reduce to a small scale what we can understand. And that's why I think we should really do things much more simple, so that our world and technology, and also especially with the water, should be so that what we produce and what we do, there should be a direct reflection which can educate us. because we need that feedback in order to change ourselves. That's something we have to think much more about, the social process as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to open the discussion to everybody into the break.
One little remark, excuse me.
Okay, of course.
I don't want to leave you so frustrated. I can tell you, I can tell you at the moment we are in very close discussion with 2 countries. I'm not able to say the names, but we are very hopeful. So we keep our thumbs.
So we keep our fingers crossed.